Kia ora and welcome to another episode of a video podcasts with me, your host Hafsa for ANZAM called Spill the Beans. Today I'm joined by Professor Brad Jackson, who is an Associate Dean Strategic Engagement and Professor of Leadership and Governance at the University of Waikato. Welcome, Brad.
Kia ora, Hafsa.
Great to have you on the podcast.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for your very kind invitation.
Oh, thank you for coming along. So, Brad, I think the first conversation, the first question for me to you is about your journey into academia and how you came into academia. Because when we were talking, you did mention about different things through which you came into academia. So that'll be really interesting to know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to reflect. It's been 40 plus years I've been in academia, and although I've spent a lot of the time on the edges and the fringes of academia practice, but actually it's been interesting. It's not only been a geographic but also a multidisciplinary journal, because I started my career in geography, Bachelor of Science at the University of Bristol, was very focused on quantitative techniques, and then I migrated to Canada to UBC for my Master of Arts in Geography, which had a very strong hermeneutic interpretive approach to that. The job situation wasn't that great in geographies, and so I got engaged in adult continuing education. I went from Vancouver to Calgary, and Alberta was a wonderful place to be involved in continuing professional learning. And but it was working at the Banff Centre as an executive development centre that I first got interested in or engaged in executive management development, which took me to the University of Calgary. Plus, finally, better late than never, went and got my PhD over a 7-year period, very part-time basis, at the University of Lancaster, the management school there, which enabled me to move to Aotearoa, New Zealand, about 99. I joined the Victoria Business School and the School of Management there, and then moved to the University of Auckland Business School, where I had the honour and privilege of being the first Professor of Leadership, Fletcher Building Trust Chair in Leadership, and then returned back to Victoria University. I'd been the head of School of Management before I left, and I came back as the head of School of Government. And so I got very interested in public sector, particularly interface between public and community. So I got a professorship in public and community leadership there, which then took me to Griffith University in Brisbane, had a professorship in social innovation, and combination of my grandson and then COVID brought me home, and I'm delighted to now be based at the University of Waikato in these roles. In fact, it's a year and 5 days to the date that I've been there, so it's very timely that we have this conversation.
Wow.
Back home in Aotearoa, that's for sure.
Year and 5 days.
Yes, that's it.
Very precise.
Well, we actually physically arrived the day before lockdown, and yeah, we were just so glad we had just a few days to get to move, and we're very happy to be back here.
Yeah.
But the Australian experience was wonderful. I gained so much from it, great colleagues, and so the ANZAM relationship means an awful lot to me, and so I'm pleased to be speaking today.
Oh, wow, that's great, because that's something we don't hear every day about the ANZAM relationship so much.
Yeah.
But having your experience in Australia and New Zealand definitely adds so much to this discussion. So your title, which is the Associate Dean Strategic Engagement, could you share some insights about what this role is? Because it's not your traditional head of school role here.
No, it is a new role. I'm the first. And essentially, it's the key focus is to support our PBC Matt Bolger to be able to get the school even more strongly connected, Waikato Management School, with a variety of stakeholders. So obviously business, large and SMEs, iwi organisations, Maori leaders, for-purpose sector organisation, as well as public sector organisations. So it's really strengthening. A lot of our colleagues have individual relationships. We are working to strengthen that sort of management school stakeholder relationship in a very dynamic sort of multi-directional way, which I think is really, really vital. So critical focus is around getting input into our strategy, input into our curriculum, our research, creating internships. So University of Waikato, every student goes through a workplace internship in terms of workplace readiness, helping out organizations in terms of graduate placements, promoting professional learning, and getting more experiential learning into the classroom, guest lectures, live case studies, those kinds of things. And just really, creating a stronger, I suppose, that mutually reinforcing relationship between our stakeholders. And so we've been holding a number of regional business leaders meetings in, Hamilton, Tauranga, Auckland, Whakatane, Rotorua, Cambridge, and Milk. So we really take this notion that it's really important to understand the context of the various challenges that each of the regions are facing, and what we can do to help support that in terms of our research and our teaching, and really preparing the next wave of talent for these organizations.
Which is very crucial, isn't it?
Very much so. It's been a really, throughout my career, that's been a real passion of mine, because I actually think we are the richer in terms of the kind of intellectually, but also in terms of our abilities to be able to properly prepare, our graduates and those that come back to us. I just think it's, in this day and age, having those lines of communication engagement are really, really, really important. So we can create a relevant and impactful business school.
Because that is the key, the impactful business school. Because if you do just the stuff that you would be doing, you're probably not going to make an impact. But
yeah, and I think from my own experience, just in terms of, and we have been quite narrow in terms of how we've defined impact, in terms of our citations, or the publications and all those kinds of things. But actually, from my own experience and others around me, I've seen that our research agenda is actually all the richer if we engage. I think some of the most interesting ideas that I've picked up intellectually have come from my engagement with practice. And I think we have an interesting model generally where we will tend to engage with businesses after the research, or maybe when we just need to get them in for the data. I think it's really about having conversations much earlier from both sides, because from the perspective of business, I often find we're being contacted to come in and evaluate, to assess what's already done, provide a grade, because there's a sort of strong idea about that's what we do. It's not unimportant in terms of quality assessment, but I always say, if only you'd got us involved early on in that conversation, we could have created something, richer. And so, my experience in New Zealand generally is that I've been really impressed by how willing and open, business, public, not-for-profit organisations are to give you time, to give you feedback. And certainly from the Waikato Management School, I've seen just a tremendous commitment and interest in what we're doing, and a real sense of loyalty as well to, our Bachelor of Management Studies, our MBA. And it's lovely to meet our alumni who are now, running key organizations in all sectors, not just business sectors, and reflecting on how important that was for them. And they're wanting to make sure that we recreate that kind of experience as we move forward.
Because you wouldn't think that people would consider alumni as a key stakeholder in designing your strategy or your research agenda, but here is a point in terms of looking at alumni and going, what is it that we can do differently as a business school as well?
Well, and certainly not, the US model, or, going for money. Obviously, scholarships can be very, very helpful, and but it's more about actually what are we going to, and it's one of the things that appealed to me about coming to the University of Waikato. I've had a number of engagements over the years, was I just see this as being a really dynamic, progressive region. And it's, I always say, go to where places are going, and just the energy that's here right now, and the sense of possibility, through COVID and beyond. And so I just think universities, it matters where they are. When I think of the University of Calgary, and Griffith University, Victoria University, and it really matters that you can actually tap into the energy that's in the region, but to have that kind of global ambition and to share that global ambition. So being a geography, I'm not, you're not surprised. Where we are matters a lot to me, and I've done a lot in the, say, for example, the field of leadership, to say, place, don't forget place. I mean, we talk about context, but actually I'm more assertive there and saying it's no, there's this attachment to this particular place. It's important
Mm,
source of, it can be a great constraint, of course, for good leadership. But so yeah, so in many respects, this role draws on all the things that I've been passionate about over the years. And if I think going back to my adult continuing education years, the sort of professional learning, really
mm,
keen to find ways, how do we get more relevant? How do we become more active in professional learning throughout a lifetime, even into retirement? How can we carry on being retired, relevant
mm.
during that period?
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that happening in action.
Yes, it
Mm,
is, and I think with the reduction in international students, I think there aren't many positives out of that, but there is potentially a sense that that's always going to be a very important constituency to us. But this might be the time now for us to say, what are we doing, within the MBA and beyond, for those who are in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and even their 60s, in terms of what
mm.
can we do to be more relevant there.
Nice. So, because you've had such diverse experience across different universities, if you had the opportunity today to share at least a few key messages with the NZAM community, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I suppose this won't be any surprise, but I do actually think about being proactive in engagement, because right now we have the sort of holy trinity of research, teaching, and service, and I actually think if we reframe service, and historically I thought about that as leadership, but actually engagement captures that more effectively because it's much more of a mutually reinforcing relationship. But I'd say if in your career you will get so much emphasis placed on research, and you'll get that. And so I'm not going to plug that because everybody else does. I will plug teaching because I find that's, to me, one of the most satisfying part of my career. But think seriously about your engagement, and give
Mm,
time and effort into that, and it will pay off big time. It certainly paid off to me very early on when I was doing my doctorate, giving presentations to business groups on my research. I got so much good feedback and help while I was doing it. So seek it out, don't be shy, but get out there and get engaged. In fact, I used to have a motto: 1 hour off campus is worth 2 hours on, and that's not necessarily being in your home office. It's actually being outside. You pick up so many things by just being out and about, you know, engaging with business and with place. I suppose the other thing related to that is really thinking about your impact. There's a lot more pressure being placed on this notion of impact, particularly in Europe. Been very impressed with how business schools are aligning themselves around social environmental impact. I see some movements here in Australasia around that too, but actually thinking about from an individual perspective, what is my impact? What is my purpose? What am I here to change? And how
mm,
does the research, the teaching, the engagement add up over a period, over a career? So there'd be the two things. But third thing, it's not going to surprise you, but get even more engaged in ANZAM than you are right now. ANZAM's been very good to me over the years. I remember I arrived in New Zealand. I had about 5 days to write a conference abstract to this thing called ANZAM. It was in Hobart, and it was a wonderful conference, and it just got me connected to this terrific community of scholars in Australasia. But I think I should go beyond. To me, my favourite region is Oceania. And in fact, I've done a lot to promote Oceania as a kind of great place for researching and teaching, practicing leadership. So with Pacific Islanders there as well, I think this is Maori Tikanga. We've got a very rich place in which the rest of the world can come and learn from.
mm.
And so I'm hoping that online we're able to do that, but I'm hoping we'll be able to do that more through travel too. So I think ANZAM is a really important organisation, and I think from my perspective, it's been massive in terms of my career. It's really helped me along, and I've learned so much from about it. And so it's great to see the next generation, people like yourself, Hafsa, who've taken up the beacon, and we'll do everything we can to support you. So don't forget ANZAM and the wonderful JMO as well. My good friend, the late great Ken Parry, was the foundational editor of Journal of Management Organisation, and just really appreciate what he's done, and encouraging my colleagues to publish in that distinct
Mm.
journal as well. So and support it.
Yeah, absolutely love the first. advice that you had, about the first message that you had about engagement. I think that that is such a significant area to tap into across business schools.
It's a great way to get energy
Mm,
and to think differently about what you're doing. And we always tend to think about, oh, I do the research now, I better translate it. But my sense, if it's great research, very early on, you want people shaping that
mm,
and influencing you, and you will get a richer product at the end of it. So
mm.
yeah, so it's about reframing what we mean by engagement. I think that's to take a much deeper, broader perspective on that.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've just got time for that today, Brad. Thank you so much for your time. And to the listeners, if you want to connect with Brad, you can just Google Brad Jackson at University of Waikato, or you can email Anzam to get his details. And I'll be back again next month with another episode of Spill the Beans.
Well, kia ora, Hafsa. Thank you. What a great pleasure. Thanks for all the work you put into this and all the preparation. And I'm really delighted to see. I think it was number 6 in the series, and I'm just looking forward to seeing the others and encouraging my colleagues to step up and be um,
Oh, I'd love that.
and participate too. Wishing you all the very best and all my good colleagues in Ansel. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.